Welcome to the Ankylosing Spondylitis Podcast, hosted by me, Jason Saga. I'm a 35-year plus spondy looking to bring the community closer. I'll be reaching out to organizations, doctors, nutritionists, and anyone that I think can help increase our spondy quality of life. Hey everybody, before this next episode starts, I wanted to do a couple of housekeeping items for the Ankylosing Spondylitis Podcast. I wanted to let everybody know that the t-shirts are now available to order. If you go, there's a link that's going to be in the show notes of this episode that you'll hear next. Also, if you go to my website, it's going to be lakeshoregraphics.net, who is my partner for printing these shirts, and it's under the fundraising tab, and I'll have a direct link to it. When you go there, you're going to see one row of shirts, women's shirts. There's little arrows to the left or the right to scroll over, and you'll find the men's shirts as you go through. And the way this is going to run is, and it says this on the page too, is that they will take all orders until February 28th. Once all the orders are amassed, they'll then print the shirts and mail them out after that. What happens is once they have your shirt printed, you'll go ahead and you can either pay for it on the website or call them or ask them to call you and pay for the shirt. And then at that time, once it's ready, and they'll then calculate shipping to you and call you back and let you know what the shipping charge is going to be for the shirt. So go ahead, check them out. I hope you like them. And if there's something different, let me know, because I'm planning on doing this every few months. I'd like to be able to roll out maybe some different shirts or things of that nature. Secondly, the Patreon page is up. If you go again to spondypodcast.com, you'll find a link to the Patreon page. That is a page that is designed if you like the show and spare $1, whichever a month, or any of those levels that feel appropriate to you, I would really appreciate it. We're going to use anything raised in there to help to build up the podcast. And there are some levels in there where you can achieve certain free, what will be limited edition shirts that will only be available to people that are giving through Patreon. So again, those two items are out there, and let's get on to the show, and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to this episode of the Ankylosing Spondylitis Podcast. I've been wanting through this podcast to reach out to various people that have done different things related to ankylosing spondylitis, and today I'm very happy to have Ricky White here. Ricky's covered a number of different bases related to ankylosing spondylitis, including as an author, charity founder, developing websites and keeping busy working. And Ricky, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It was my pleasure. So let's start this off. You were diagnosed about 9 years ago, and you were working full-time at that point. And I think it's very interesting what you were doing as a career at that time when you were diagnosed.
Yeah. So, I was diagnosed around March of 2010. I was probably one of the lucky ones. I was only diagnosed in 3.5 years, which has served me well up to this point, which we'll probably talk about in a little while. But the reason is because I was a nurse at the time. And now, although I was a registered nurse, I'd never heard of ankylosing spondylitis before. But what happened was, when I was having prolonged periods of what was being diagnosed as sciatica and lower back pain, having a nurse with a lower back pain in the UK is it's almost part of the job description. So it wasn't seen as anything special, but some of my symptoms didn't add up to one of my colleagues that I was just friendly with. We were talking on a tea break one time. And it was like, you really should get checked out for this. And he said ankylosing spondylitis. At the time, I didn't really kind of understand the words coming out of his mouth. And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. He says, you need to go next time you see a GP, you need to go and ask for this blood test. And he wrote it down for me. He gave me the blood test, which was a HLA-B27. I was fine for a little while because I'd just come back from sick leave. I was on some anti-inflammatories. I was working. I was doing my physio exercises. I was doing all the things that most people go through when they first get diagnosed or before they get diagnosed. And it was several months later after that when I went to see my GP again. But this time it was a locum, which is like a stand-in doctor. My regular GP, general practitioner. If you're in the US, that's the primary care doctor. They're the same thing. She wasn't there. She was off I guess, sick or on vacation. And there was this young stand-in doctor, and I was talking to her about my current symptoms and how I was struggling and how they were different from last time and whatever we were talking about. And she just kind of started typing away on her computer, and I started to bring up this possibility of having this blood test, and she was already a step ahead of me. And she says, I'm going to send you for this blood. I was like, oh, okay. I was actually going to ask and talk to you about that. She says, no, let's get this checked out. So she did the blood test. The blood had to get sent away. The local facility couldn't do it, and it was sent away. So it was several weeks before I got the blood test back for that, actually. And so I went back to my GP again to get the results because we didn't have online. In England, they're a bit far behind with the technology and the healthcare. They don't have online blood reporting. At least they did 9 years ago. So I went back to the GP to get my results, and my regular GP was there. And she very dismissively says, it's not back yet, but I'll be very surprised if you had it. This is just a waste of money. I'm not sure why she even did this test. And that made me kind of angry. And then I think it was probably 3 days later, I get a call from her saying, yeah, your blood tests came back. They were positive. I need to refer you on to a rheumatologist. And so she was kind of left to eat her own words a little bit. I actually never went back to see that doctor again, I don't think.
I don't think I blame you.
Yeah, I think that was more through circumstance because I actually moved after that. But and then I got my appointment for my first rheumatologist appointment, which was even worse. Actually, my second rheumatology appointment was the worst. The first one, I just went, they took a load of measurements, they sent me for scans and kind of did the whole workup. And when I went back to get those results, I saw somebody else who was either a locum or an understudy of the consultant of the actual rheumatologist I was under the care of. And he says, yeah, it looks like you've probably got it. It's hard to tell right now because there's no changes on x-rays, and there was some signs of inflammation on the MRI scan in my SI joints, but there were no other physical changes. So he says, so we'll just have to see how it goes. He said, and the words he said to me were, if you've got it, your bones are going to fuse and then you're not going to have pain anymore. If you don't have it, you're going to be fine. It'll get over it. I was like, okay. And I just kind of walked out stumped. Like, how was I supposed to respond to that? And that started making me really angry. The more I thought about it at home, the more angry I got. Well, I really should have said, well, how are we going to treat it? What are we going to do about it? Well, can we stop the fusion? It's all these questions rushed into my head. It was like, I was a nurse. I was supposed to know to ask all these questions, but I was sitting the side of the patient's desk and I was just kind of blinded by headlights. I wasn't sure what to say or what to do. It kind of dawned on me that I didn't understand patients' journeys as well as I thought I did as a nurse. I actually worked in an ICU as well, which doesn't help because half of my patients are unconscious. So I just talk to myself most of the time. So which happens a lot. Maybe there was stuff I needed to learn, and that's when kind of the whole advocacy thing kicked in. Not only did I almost like flicking a switch, start advocating for myself in the way I should have done from the start, but then I started to help others and kind of build on that and go from there. And then I actually moved to London. I was in Bath in England at the time, and I moved to London because my wife had got a job there. We moved. We weren't married at the time. We were going to get married, and we moved together in London. And I saw my new rheumatologist at my new job. I was at that job for 9 months total before I left. I gave up working in ICU because I just physically couldn't do the shifts anymore. There was a period where I got diagnosed where I was off work for 3 months solid, and it used to take me, I used to have a studio flat, and it used to take me around 15 minutes to walk, say 20 paces to the bathroom. That's by far the lowest point of my life and my AS journey so far. I was depressed. And this was when I got so basically as this episode started, I went to see my rheumatologist because things just got a whole lot worse than they'd ever done before, and that's when I actually got my official diagnosis. And that was on my first appointment to that new rheumatologist, having just moved to London. And he went, boom, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get you on anti-TNS. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. He gave me cortisone shots. It was just boom. It's like, why didn't I get any of this in my other rheumatology? Why am I getting all the treatment now when I'm really bad? And so that was I was blessed in a way that I got to see a good doctor. I was fortunate that I was around people that could help me identify that was maybe more problem than was initially thought. And then I got my diagnosis in just 3.5 years, because that's obviously saved me a hell of a lot of pain and stiffness. And I've got no fusion right now. I mean, I've got the odd little bone growth here and there, but nothing to write home about. So I'm functionally very good because of that early diagnosis. If I hadn't have got that early diagnosis, then I think things would have been very, very different for me.
Well, out of curiosity, now let's go back to 2010 when you got the diagnosis. You said you had been dealing with what you thought was sciatica and some other sore back, which is understandable when you're moving people around and on your feet all day.
Yeah.
But have you ever sat and thought, okay, far back did I have this, and just not recognize, pop a couple Tylenol and carry on my way?
Yeah, I have thought about that. And so that's why the 3.5 years is probably my best guess. The time it took between all these doctor's appointments that I've talked about and kind of thinking maybe there was more, and that was probably less than a 2-year period. But thinking back, it was probably happening much sooner than that. And my best guess is 3.5 years is the total from the first time I got sciatica or diagnosed with sciatica. Yeah, so that's my best guess. But actually, from the time of seeing the first doctor appointment that we just talked about and actually getting through the whole process, it was probably 18 months at the most.
All you have to do is read some of people's experiences with their rheumatologist. 18 months in some cases is, it's just super fast compared to what some people go through.
Absolutely.
So that's had to have really made a huge difference for you.
Oh, no, it undoubtedly has made a huge difference for me. I'm very thankful for that. Happenstance was very kind to me.
As you've done that now, you've looked and you've said, okay, I understand the medical side of it, having the background as a nurse, and then you come forward and now you're the patient and you're experiencing a whole different exposure. By the time you moved to the United States, had you already formulated the idea for the book you wrote, which is called Taking Charge, Making Your Healthcare Appointments Work for You?
Yeah, I actually probably had the idea for the book several years before I moved to the States. I moved to the States in October 2014. So one of the things I did and I think I started in that 3 months where I couldn't walk. I actually started a blog, endlesstracks.com. Which was my AS blog. It's still up. You can still go back and read the old posts. I've not posted for years. There's nothing new or fresh there necessarily. But some of my old posts are there, and that was a form of therapy for me. And it really helped me kind of understand my disease, understand myself. And as I interacted and shared it around, then obviously I got feedback and comments, and then it started helping me understand the community and everything that is kind of encompassed within AS. And that got really popular, not to brag too much, but, I was Google ranked number 1 in the world for ankylosing spondylitis blogs. That's not the case anymore, obviously, because I'm not active on it. But so I got into this habit of writing mostly through therapy, and then it kind of turned into a way of helping people and a form of education. And then so I kind of got this idea for the book. Because what I always struggled with is finding somebody I could relate to, which sounds weird. You'd have thought I'd had double the amount of people I can relate to because I'm both a healthcare professional and a patient. But it turns out when you're in the middle, neither side necessarily trusts you as much as maybe is fair, right? You're tainted in a way. I think that's changed now. Now people know me. That's definitely changed. So I found it hard as well because people were saying, I have this problem, I have this problem. I was like, I don't have any of those problems. And I was like, why don't I have those problems? Am I just lucky? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, actually, no, it's because I've got this form of education. I've got this nursing degree. I've got this experience. And so these aren't problems for me. But you know what? I have these problems instead, which they don't have. And that kind of hit home that the fact that, well, I'm just me and I've just got to do what's good for me. And I've got to try and learn for me. And then there's these common problems. Not everyone's the same. So we just kind of got to deal with that and kind of pick our information, our resources from different sources. You can't always go to one source, right? Because no one's going to match your needs completely. So I started formulating this idea for the book, thinking, well, if these things aren't problems for me, but they're problems for other people, then maybe I can help more people if I just put it in a book rather than a series of blog posts, And so I formulated this idea, but getting around to actually writing a book's kind of a big pain in the ass. And looking back, now I've written actually several books because I've written both fiction and non-fiction now. But looking back, the actual writing the book's the easy part. It's a bit everyone fears the most, but it's actually the easy part. The hard part comes after it's written, with the editing and then the marketing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I got the idea maybe several years before I moved to America. And when I moved to America, what happened is my wife went back to the workplace and I became the stay-at-home parent. So we switched roles within the family. And so even though I was extremely busy looking after then a 6-month-old and an almost 3-year-old when we first moved, I kind of still managed to find some time in nap times and things to start writing and start doing some stuff for me. And then I wrote the book.
Now, is your wife American?
She is, yeah.
Okay, so that's what brought you over here.
Yeah, we met. She was in England for postgrad study. We met there. We got married. We had our kids in England, and then we moved over in end of October 2014.
You get to America. Now, having AS itself is as many can attest to, is just a fatiguing at times disease. And when my kids were young, I was still married at the time. You were married, but nonetheless, I would go to work. You would stay home. They were little. They required all of your time.
Mm.
Whether you're a man or a woman that stays home with young children and has AS, I give anybody that does that credit because that's far harder than going to work.
I think that's possibly true in a way and also not true in another way. So it was a huge adjustment for me to be at home for a start. And I think the fatigue was definitely a problem. And especially when they're not sleeping all through the night or if they're having nightmares or whatever, that, they're fine now. They're much older now. They're 4 and 7 now. So the sleep's not an issue, but then it was. And so I wasn't sleeping too well and they weren't sleeping too well. And then add the general fatigue on top of that and things can get a bit grumpy in the household. But what I did find it helped was the fact that, so I was used to working 12-hour shifts, right? And actually, I left ICU to do clinic work, which fed into the book, actually. So I was a specialist and people came to see me. I was worked with anaesthetists and they came to see me prior to surgery and I did some workup on them and things before neurosurgery. They were all having, brain operations on their brain and stuff. And on the spine. I mean, that helped me cement the idea for the book because I was literally sitting on the other side of the desk, right? Patients were coming, booking appointments to see me. And I had to move from ICU because I couldn't do the 12-hour shifts and 14-hour shifts. And the physicality in ICU is immense. So I moved to that position because it was 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It was more sitting down. It was more restful. That was kind of good. And I was managing with that. But I think I was even better when I was at home with the kids because what I couldn't do sitting down all day was get up and do stuff necessarily all the time, right? Mm-hmm. I tried to as much as I can, but you kind of can't sit down all day and you can't be super active all day. You've got to find this balance and you've got to be up for a bit and then you've got to take a rest. You've got to plan your rest. Up for a bit, plan a rest. Up for a bit, plan a rest. And with the kids, we managed to get into a routine where I could play with them. I always played with them at the same times every day. And then I knew I could take a sit down and a rest because they were having nap time or they were having TV time or quiet time. So, I could literally plan their day around what I needed, which helped them because it meant that when I was with them, I was with them. I was playing with them. I was 100% focused on them, not on necessarily on my fatigue or pain or the chores or anything that I needed to do. It was daddy and child time. And then it's like, okay, daddy needs to take his rest now. You get to go and do this other fun thing or play by yourself or do something else, or take a nap or whatever. So once I found that routine, I actually found physically it much easier to deal with. Emotionally, mentally, it's very tough. But yeah, so I think that statement of it's both better and worse, I think, are true.
I think for me, it was when the kids were younger, they were all sub 1-year-olds, that it was much easier to plan things. But by the time we had 3 of them and they ranged in age from, 5 to 1, that's when I was just like, oh my goodness. I looked forward to going to work.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't love my kids or anything, and anybody that has kids will understand that. They just know, oh my gosh, they're the best thing, but they're also little energy vampires, and I didn't have a ton of energy to deal with that.
No, I agree with that.
Now, in the 9 years that you've had the AS, in the 9 years that you've been advocacy and talking and everything, you're still active in martial arts, but have you noticed that, minus the age part as you aged, but have you noticed that your body is not willing to take as much anymore? Have you noticed, is there increased fusing that you've encountered?
I actually encountered the opposite. So when I moved to America, I probably let myself go. Having now a desk job, maybe not looking after myself as well as I should have done, I'd put on more weight. I wasn't very flexible, very mobile. I moved to the US and I basically had 3 problems to solve. I needed to do more for my condition. I needed to lose weight and I needed to find friends, right? Because when you move to a new country, the only friends I've got are the ones that my wife has. You know, I don't have my own social network. So I had these 3 problems. And so I was kind of thinking for a while of how could I get out on my own and do things and get away from the kids for, an hour or two, a couple of times a week maybe, or maybe I should start going to the gym again and all this kind of things, because I knew how important the exercise was. I was preaching it, but I wasn't necessarily practicing it. And I thought, well, I used to do martial arts as a kid, and up to about the age of 12 when I stopped, 12 or 13, I was like, well, maybe I could try that again, because in a way that kind of solves all 3 problems at once, right? It's getting me, I could maybe make friends and that I train with. It's going to help my flexibility and help my condition and my spine, and it's going to hopefully help me lose weight. So I joined a local martial arts school, and I have not looked back since. Since then, I went from around 195-ish plus pounds down to 154. My pain score, because I literally record, I have a spreadsheet, I literally record my pain twice a day. It's just habit now, thankfully. And my pain scores started dropping, my overall general pain scores, without any change in treatments of medications. Because I'd lost weight, I had less pressure, I was getting more flexible. What my martial arts training did was actually increase my resilience. I was coping with my flares much better. It's kind of hard to verbalize how I was coping with flares much better, but physically I felt like it wasn't as much of a big deal as it was. Even though the pain number was maybe the same, it felt like, I guess there was confidence there, because it felt like, oh, I've done this, I can do this. This I know what I need to do to get over this flare. But it also felt like my body is used to stress now through the martial arts. It's used to working hard. My training has built in some resilience into my body, into my joints. I can just deal with this now much more easily. If I'm brutally honest, as I sit here right now, I've never ever been better. I've never been probably fitter. I've never been more flexible. And although I have had some deterioration in my scans, I don't have any kind of solid fusion yet. I am actually now. So when I was first diagnosed, I was diagnosed as severe AS. It was progressing very quickly, but I got on anti-TNF treatments extremely quickly. I was given all the best treatments from the go. Something seemed to have happened that it slowed my progression down significantly, even to the point where there was a point when I moved to America, I actually obviously stopped taking my anti-TNF. And when I was here, I had no insurance for the first year. I couldn't afford the treatments because, my wife was trying to find work, and, we just didn't we were spending what money we had on what we needed.
Sure.
And paying thousands of dollars or whatever for anti-TNF wasn't the thing, which was another reason why I needed to make sure I started martial arts, because I needed to do something, right, if I wasn't taking medicine. And actually, I only recently started back on anti-TNF med 2 months ago, or less than 2 months ago. I was off them for like 4 years. And the only reason I started back on them was not from a pain point of view, because my pain levels are generally quite low, is just because there was some deterioration in the scan. It was mild, but, we want to try and keep me as active as possible for as long as possible. So I've gone from being classed as severe AS to now having not even mild AS, having more. Now I could fall into the category non-radiographic SPA with the new classification. So something happened and something changed, and I'm thankful for that. But so that just helps. So that coupled with the martial arts really does just keep me working. There are days where I am possibly more able than an able-bodied person, in inverted quotes. And then obviously there are days where I struggle to walk. But those days are few and far between these days, thankfully.
That's good to hear. Having had this for the number of years that I've gone through. When I was first diagnosed, there was nothing but NSAIDs for inflammation reduction. There was no Enbrels. There was no anything like that. So you just took it as it went, and now I have a fully fused lower back. I've had the multiple hip replacements. So there's things I can't do martial arts. There's things like that I would love to do. And so when I hear somebody that's receiving great benefits like you are from that type of staying physical, I hope that anybody that listens to this that has the ability and understands that, it's going to hurt. You're going to have days when you're sore, but anything you can do to shed pounds, eat right, and stay active is going to do, in my opinion, and this is opinion, not medical advice, is going to do a lot to help slow the progression of this disease.
Absolutely. And probably the hardest thing about that is the consistency. Without consistency, so almost it's not worth doing. Right? You've got to be consistent if you take that path. So something that I probably don't talk about it as often as I should, but something I found on earlier on when I was training the martial arts, and I think this rule applies to any activity you do, whether you want to run or do yoga or whatever you want to do to help your condition, is you've got to plan rest. And I think as a community, we're very poor at that. What happens is we have these flares, we have bad days, we rest. We get better. We think, I feel good today, so now I'm going to do these 100 things that I've got on my to-do list and overdo it. And look, now I'm in the pits again. And I see it time and time again from people. And they have these huge, massive peaks and troughs. And it's like, well, if you maybe just try and pace yourself a little bit or, do stuff. But then after you've done some stuff, plan a rest break. I literally say between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, I'm going to sit down and binge Netflix or whatever. I'm going to have a cup of tea and rest. Or coffee or whatever, beer or wine, and take your pick. So I'm going to have this rest, and then I'm going to go for another hour or two. People really don't seem to do that. They seem to be, I'm active today, so I do everything I can, and then they pay for it the next day. And what I found is building in planned rest breaks means that I achieve so much more than I ever used to achieve when I used to do things that way. So I think that's something that people don't. It's very hard to get in a habit of doing because we're all really busy. We've all got so many demands on us, and it does mean saying no to things. But I have found that helps me keep more active by planning my rest periods and more productive than anything else I've ever tried.
I agree. I know from what's personally worked for me, and now this has taken a lot of years to get the mental ability to do this, but the worse my flare gets, the more I go at it. And I don't mean I'm not going out to run marathons or anything like that, but if I'm having a particularly hard day or I've had a series of hard days where the flare seems to be acting up, that's the days. And again, because of my hips, I'm limited in my ability to do running or long distance walking or anything like that. But if I'm sitting there watching TV and it's not a movie, for example, every commercial break I'm doing push-ups or I stand up and stretch, or I use that commercial break as my timer to say, okay, now it's time to get up and move through it. And it hurts. If it's the first commercial break, I'm going to be in some serious pain. By the end of that day, by the time I go to bed, it makes, for me, a noticeable difference.
Yeah, it's taking that short hit of maybe your pain's a little worse for that short period of time while you get things moving again and kind of put that extra effort in. But actually, in the long run, you're actually in less pain overall.
I think so. I don't get flares like I used to.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good tip, actually, about using the commercial breaks as a timer. That's a good tip. I'm going to try that one.
I found it's enough time for me to knock out 20 push-ups and a couple stretches. Stretching for me is a big deal.
Yeah.
So you've moved through this. You're an accomplished author. People can access everything you've done from your website, which is rickywhite.net, just like it sounds.
That's correct.
RICKYWHITE.net. I'll also have a link to that in the show notes. But you get here to the States, and as you're going along, you turn around because young kids, writing a book, dealing with ankylosing spondylitis is not enough. You co-found a charity.
Yeah, apparently I wasn't busy enough at home with two under fives. Yeah. So let me tell you the story then. So back in 2012, event happened. There was a lovely lady and someone I'm pleased to call my friend, Jennifer Vischer. who you should definitely have on the show, by the way. She started a walk. Now, it was a virtual walk, so you didn't have to physically meet in places. And it was called Walk Your AS Off. Yeah, obviously a play on words there. And the idea is in the month of May, which is internationally AS Awareness Month. It wasn't for a while in the US, not at that time, but it's being moved in line with the rest of the world. So for the month of May, people with AS would just try a little bit harder. I think all of us, everyone listening, and I include myself, is we all could probably do just a little bit more to help our condition than maybe we're doing right now. And it doesn't matter how active you are now, there's a good chance you could probably just do an extra few steps a day or just something a little bit more. And it was kind of on this basis that she formed the walk, because walking is such a beneficial thing to do. And it's something that almost everybody with AS can do to some degree. And getting a little bit extra exercising is only ever a good thing for us. So that was the premise is, you know what, we're going to track our steps for the month of May, and you're going to hold a little competition with yourself, not with anybody else. People we do have teams, so people kind of group together and kind of are in a team together, but you're not competing with other team members. Teams aren't competing against each other. You're just competing with yourself. You're just trying to do a little bit more today than you did yesterday or this week than last week. And by recording your steps every day, you've got some way of knowing how well you're doing or how much you need to keep moving today to try and beat your step count. Okay, so it's just a way of encouraging people to move a little more, to help themselves primarily. But when everyone starts doing it together, then everyone starts encouraging each other. And if you're there saying, I'm in a lot of pain today, I've not got many steps in, and you start having a bad day, people will come to your help and say, I know it's tough, I know how you feel, we've all got the same condition, but let's just do a few steps together. And so the wonderful thing about it was that it does work, and people are helped by it. So that was in 2012 was the first event, and we've held it every year since. And each year it's kind of pretty much grown year on year. And what happened was we got to the point where I joined in the second year, and so Jenna was basically doing it on her own for a while, and then some of us who were doing it regularly said, you need some help, and she asked for help in some cases, and we just kind of volunteered and helped to run and organize the walk. And there come a point where we thought, well, this is great. People are moving more in May. But what about the other 11 months of the year? Because they're just then going back into their old habits after a month. It's not long enough to form any kind of habit. Why can we not do things year round? We realized the limitations with the kind of structure of the event itself and the name and things like that. So Jenna had this idea that she wanted to form a charity. The main event would obviously be Walk Your Ass Off, but the charity would then be able to do other events year round. We would be able to just do more. And that's what we did. So Jenna was the driving force behind the charity. And at the start of us, there was 5 founding members. I was one of those, the vice chair when we formed. And we've been very slowly growing the charity. It's still a very small charity, and we're an all-volunteer organization. No one gets paid anything. We all have full-time jobs and all our commitments to do. So we are very slowly growing and slowly moving, but I think in a way that's a benefit. And so we formed the charity Walk as One, and that's where we are. So in May will be our next Walk Your Ass Off. We're hoping to have a new event at the end, possibly around October time this year. Details yet to be confirmed. We're in the process right now of building a brand new website, a brand new web app to help with the step recording and team communication. There's now message boards in each team, so the teams can have their own little community on the website. So the website, if you visit it, will be down right now, but in a week or two, the brand new one will be up, and people will be able to look and check us out and maybe join in one of the walks. And you'll be able to record all year round now. So you can literally just every time you go for a walk, if you've got a Fitbit or something, you could just log the steps and every day and track your progress year round. When we first started in 2012, we had the goal of maybe going around the Earth, right? Having enough miles to go around the globe. And we smashed it. We got like 4 times the amount of steps we needed.
Oh, cool.
Collectively. Yeah, collectively, we smashed it. So then we went, let's go to the moon the next year. And then we smashed that. So for the last 3 or 4 years, we've been aiming for Mars. Turns out Mars is a really freaking long way away. Much further than you can imagine, than you think. When you think, we've done Earth, ran the globe, and we've done Earth to the moon, so going to Mars shouldn't be that much further, right? No, you're completely wrong. It's a lot further.
We need a lot more people.
Yeah, we need a lot more steps. I did the math several times just to check it's right. And despite logging 2 billion steps, or over 2 billion steps, then we're still only about 2%, less than 2% of the way there. We've got a long way to go. But we had a 10-year goal of getting to Mars, and maybe we won't reach that. Maybe we're too far behind to catch that. But hopefully now we're logging year round, and we're going to have new events. We can start getting closer towards that goal. And the reason we picked 10 years is because at the time, on average, it was average of 10 years to delayed diagnosis for people with AS. And that's why we chose a 10-year goal.
Oh, neat. Once this new website rolls out, it's also going to be a mobile app?
Yeah, it'll be what's called it'll be what's called a progressive web app. So I'm sure you've been on websites where it says add to home screen. You've seen that little notification pop up, and then you click it, and then it has an icon just like a regular app.
Yes.
And then you click it, and then it just looks like a regular app, right? So basically it's that. So if you do that, it looks like a regular app. It is technically still a website, but that is the latest and greatest technology, and pretty much a lot of apps are going to be that way these days.
Well, that'll let you avoid like iTunes stores and Google Play and...
Well, and being a small charity as well, we have to obviously pay people to build these things for us. Now, I'm a web developer as well. It's so when I became a stay-at-home dad, I wanted to pick up some new skills and maybe even start my own business, because I'd always dreamed of starting my own business. And that's what I did. I learned how to code and become a web developer. So I know those technologies. So, I don't have to, although I'm not building it, other people are building it with more expertise than I am. I can still maintain it. But also the other thing is you need one set of technologies and set of coding languages for an Android phone, and you need completely different technologies and coding languages for an iPhone, and a completely different set of technologies and languages for the web. So you've got these. So you basically got to build 3 apps, and they've just got to talk to each other, and the databases connect, and you just talk to each other. So but no one person knows necessarily all those 3 things, and so you've got to hire 3 different people to do 3 different apps. Whereas this way, we've just got one app to build. It's cheaper. It's just as good. If anything, it's better, because when we update it, we've only got to update one thing. We haven't got to update 3 things, which incur extra costs and all that kind of stuff. So it's technology that's getting very, very popular. And in fact, Google actually ranks progressive web apps higher on rankings now, because it's their little baby. So there's a lot of benefits to doing it this way. But yeah, so and it should be mobile friendly. And I'm sure when we roll it out, there'll be bugs, and I'm sure there'll be issues, and that's fine. Tell me about them so I can fix them. And then so when the main walk starts in May, hopefully it'll be smooth running.
Well, let's hope that dramatically increases the number of people and the number of steps and everything.
Well, and that's why I wanted to redo the website, because I wanted to make it as painless as possible for people to join us. And so now we've got things like login with Twitter and Facebook and stuff. So we've knocked down a lot of the old barriers than what we used to have. So it makes the barrier to entry is much, much lower. So hopefully that helps with kind of people joining us and staying with us. And if people are kind of interested by this, for now, like I say, the website's not there right now. It will be soon, in a few weeks. I'm not sure when this episode's going to go out, but it's the time we record and it's not out yet. So if you go to Facebook, is probably where we're most active, where most of our people are most active. If you just go to facebook.com/walkasOneworldwide, and then that will be our Facebook page.
That I'll put a link for the show notes. Also on my website, SpondyPodcast.com. On the left-hand side of the page, there's a little slider bar with links. I'll put a link directly to the website in there.
Awesome.
So that'll make multiple spots that people can access it. So if they're listening to the show, they can go to the show notes. They can go to my website. They can go to Facebook, which I'll make sure it's easily accessible from a number of different spots based upon this show.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, if you just keep an eye on the Facebook page, and then when it's out, it'll be announced, and we'll go from there. And hopefully it's going to be a big year for us.
So you've got, first and foremost, father, then husband, AS, not only patient, but also advocate. And I'm guessing if somebody reached out to you through either rickywhite.net or via Facebook, you'd be happy to, if they're a newer patient or a patient that suffered for a number of years but never had the proper diagnosis, by getting your book and even talking with you, they could probably get some good ways to go if you're open to that and they are having issues with a rheumatologist.
Absolutely. I think to contact me personally, I think Facebook's the best place for the charity. For me, it's probably not the best place. So I am most active on Twitter, and I am Endless. My handle is Endless Tracks, ENDLESSTRAX.
And I'll have a link to that in the show notes, as well as your Endless Tracks blog that hasn't had anything happen in about a year or so, but it's still there.
It's been a while. Yeah, and even then it was just like one post, and it was like a year before the other post. It's still there. You can read my old stuff. There's some very popular posts on there about depression, and I had an interview with Dan Reynolds. I was kind of gracious enough to interview him, and there's lots of stuff there that can get you started. And then you can always just contact me either through my Endless Tracks blog or rickywhite.net and just kind of or Twitter and just talk to me one-to-one. And I'm always happy to help new people that are struggling. And if I can't help you or give you the advice you need, the chances are I know someone who is. One of the benefits of now, being the president, because Jenna stepped down in July and I become the president of the charity. And so one of the benefits is that I now have contacts all over the world. The Spondylitis Association of America, I'm friends with several of the members, including their new CEO, association in Canada, NAST in England, and the ones in Italy and Portugal. And so I've got contacts all over the world now, which is great, because we are, Walkers One is a worldwide charity, so to speak. Although we're registered in Maine, we kind of have people that walk with us all over the world. We're not based in one country alone. So if you're listening to this and you're not, from the United States, it's not a problem. I could probably get you help in your local country, or point you to someone who knows how to get you help in your local country.
And that's a big thing. I use myself as this just because it's an easy point of reference. I was diagnosed in 1984. I didn't meet my first person that I knew of with ankylosing spondylitis until 1996. So that was a period of time, and there was no internet at that time, or at least not in the function or the way it is today. So there was no being able to ask questions. Besides that, once a year you went to the rheumatologist. Outside of that, there was nobody else to ask anything of, or there was no thought process in my mind to even say, well, let me go to the library and see if there's something that can be looked up in a book, because there was no internet to look stuff up on. So now the connections that everybody has and can reach out, and not only that, but the support. If you're having a bad day and you make a comment about it, somebody can reach out, and they don't have to say it'll get better. They just say, man, I'm here for you if you need something. That can make the biggest impact out of anything, is just knowing that somebody's there that understands, because if nobody else in your family has it, you're kind of on an island.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your time, Ricky. Again, I can't believe all the stuff you're doing, and maybe we're going to have you on here another time, because I'd really love to delve into more about how you learned Python and how that could be applicable for people that become stay-at-home if they're computer inclined, and the different things you do. And we look forward to coming up on May with the AS month and the charity, and I want to see more and talk more about that. So I look forward to having you on in the future, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
I'd love to come back.
Oh, great.
You too. It was wonderful talking to you today.
It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and it was, again, always great to meet somebody that's going through some of the same items that I'm encountering. So it makes that community, instead of just reading people's words, I hope it brings us all closer when we hear voices to names.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye now.